Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast, My First Season. My name is Greg, and today we have a very, very special guest. I am very excited to talk to this guest because he's one of those Club Med names that you heard about that were legendary, and I'm going to share with him the story how I first heard of this gentleman. Okay, now to see if this story is true or not. He's agreed to talk about it, so I'm pretty excited about that. He is originally from Washington State, now living in Atlanta. His first season was in March of 1998 in Sonora Bay as a water ski geo. Now I'm going to introduce him now. He only goes by one name because he only needs one name. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Boone. Hi, sir. How are you?
Fantastic, Greg. Thanks for having me. And listen, before we get this thing started, yes. I got to say, this is so cool what you're doing, man. I think this is fantastic and just kind of really shows the power of that Club Med fraternity and sorority, and having all these folks being on these calls. I had no idea about this until Suzie told me about it a few weeks ago. So man, I think this is cool what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And I'm glad you agreed to come on, because if you'd said no, it was, I'm used to getting no, but I think if you had said no, it probably would have broken my heart, because you're such a funny and interesting guy. And, I finally got to meet you at the Club Med Ex-Geo reunion in 2008. After all those years of hearing about you, then I got to see you put on, I think, about a good 45-minute stand-up routine there too on stage, which had us all in stitches. So I want to talk about your comedy background too. But sure. So you know how the show works. I wonder if you can take me back in time to before Club Med, to what you were doing, and where were you living? Were you going to school? Were you working? And how did you find out about Club Med?
Yeah, for sure. But let me go back a little bit. What's the story that you know of, like that? What the first story you heard about me? I'm curious.
Okay. Oh, you want to do that one first?
Let's do it, man. Okay. I'm curious. You got me on edge here.
Okay. Well, no, I heard, now I don't know, I can't remember what year, to be frank, but I heard that there was some dude somewhere in Club Med Village and he was doing stuntman shots. And then I had to ask someone, because I felt silly, like, what's a stuntman shot? And they described it as, well, Greg, you inhale a line of salt, you do a shot of tequila, and then for some reason you squirt lime or lemon juice in your eye. And I kept thinking, why would anyone do that? Okay, so is this story true or false?
You know what? Good. Yes, Greg, it is. It's absolutely true. Of all the stories, though, I think that one was... It was a repetitive story. You think we would have learned our lesson doing it just one time and not being able to see out of one eye for a couple of days. But fortunately, it was more of a frequency than not in Cancun. So yeah,
that's Cancun. Cool. Okay. Now, okay. So did you have to talk like a pirate the remainder of the day? Was that the deal, or because you only had the one eye? Or now I heard a true stuntman shot, and this started with rugby players, was after you squirted lemon juice in your own eye, someone actually punched you in the face. Now, please say you did this without the punch in the face after.
I punched myself in the face. It's kind of that, why do you keep doing this, you idiot? So it was more of a self-inflicted wound than anything else.
Okay. So people were like, you're funny without the shot. So eventually you dropped it from your repertoire, right? I'm hoping, because
I matured a little bit, not by much, but I did mature a little bit.
But if prompted at the holidays, you'll probably break it out, right? I'm guessing.
Absolutely. Okay. It's a hit at weddings.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for confirming that story. That makes my heart grow fonder. Thank you. Now, would you care to go back in time, sir, and tell me where it all started?
Yeah. So, geez, 1998. So I had no idea what Club Med was. Again, being from Washington State, I went to college at Western Washington University, which is about an hour and a half north of Seattle, in a town called Bellingham, which is, I'd say, about 45 minutes south of Vancouver. And so I was in a recreation program where my emphasis was tourism management. And really, it was kind of 4 different phases that you went through. That third phase was actually an internship that you had to do. And we had a great program. So we had a lot of connections with other companies, like with Marriott and some other resorts. But, this internship, if you went through them, it was basically, handing out towels for 3 months. And I've always been the type of person, like, I want to do things different, and I want to do what everybody else does. So I talked to my professors. I'm like, listen, if you think I'm going to hand out towels for 3 months, I will lose my mind. I go, there's gotta be something else, I can do. And so my professor, Jill, I'll never forget, she said, well, you know what? There was somebody that went to school here a while ago who worked for Club Med Resorts. You should do a little research. And if it, sounds of interest to you, go ahead and apply and put his name in your cover letter. And so I pulled up clubmed.com, did some research, learned about, being a GO and a GE and a GM. And all the sports and things that you could do and be a part of. And they had, of course, water ski. And now, I've been water skiing since I was 4 or 5 years old. And actually the college that I was going to, we had a collegiate water ski team. So I used to compete at the
No way
level. Yeah.
See, this is why I love the States. Like in San Diego, you can take surfing for credit. So now you're telling me you can water. God, are you serious?
Yeah, it was great. And so this gentleman's name was Steve Miller. And so I filled out my application, put his name in my cover letter, and mailed it. Now, that just shows how old I am. Mailed it. I didn't email it, mailed it to the Club Med office in South Florida. And I get a call a few weeks later. Now, I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. Like, I have got to get this internship because I don't have a backup plan. So I'm rolling the dice here. So I get a call from somebody in the corporate. I don't know if it was GA or Steve Riley who contacted me, but they basically said, hey, we would love for you to interview in Vancouver, BC. Interviews are, this day and time. Love for you to get up there. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. It's only, 45 minutes away. So I go up there and, again, I'm sweating bullets because I got to get this, right? So I'm in the hotel. I don't know which hotel it was in Vancouver, but I'm in, the lobby with a bunch of other people. And of course, being in the Northwest, it's raining. So I have my ski team jacket on. And this guy comes up to me and he says, hey, when did Western, get a water ski team? And so, started talking shop and started talking about water skiing. I'm like, oh, we've had it for a few years. And so we kind of knew some of the same people in that water ski world. And he says, hey, well, my name's Steve. Nice to meet you. And I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. My name's Boone. And we started talking a little bit more. And all of a sudden it just kind of clicked. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, is your last name Miller? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I put your name in my cover letter. My professors told me about you. And he said, yeah, that's why I'm asking you about Western. So all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this could work out. So he said, listen, this was going to happen. We're going to go into this room. We're going to give you a presentation on what Club Med is. And then we break out into interviews. I'll make sure I interview you and kind of give you some more details. So had a chance to talk with him one-on-one, and he's just telling me about these, water ski shows he used to do, barefoot shows, all these different locations he's been. And I'm just salivating. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So he kind of says, all right, look, I got to ask you some basic questions. He said, would you dress up and hand out fruit on the beach? And I'm like, listen, man, I need this internship. I'll do it naked. I don't care. Whatever it is you need me to do, I'll do it. And so he said, listen, you're in, they're going to contact you probably in a couple of weeks, let you know where you're going to go. And so a couple of weeks later, sure not. And again, I can't remember if it was GA or Steve Riley. They contacted me and they said, you're going to Sonora Bay, Mexico. And so it all worked out, and that's where it all began.
Wow. All right. So you actually watched a video, a presentation about Club Med?
Yeah, they brought us into a room and they had a few people, ex-GOs. It's like Steve Miller and his wife, Drew, who they met in Club Med, and that's another story I'll tell you about here in a second. That kind of comes full circle. But yeah, they get a presentation, a little video, and they just basically broke us out into individual interviews with folks. And then, just kind of went from there.
Had you been to Mexico before?
I had gone to Mazatlan for when I graduated high school. And then my mom's side of the family is from Mexico. So there was like kind of it was meant to be, of all places, like take it back to the motherland. Let's go back to Mexico. So it kind of worked out.
It's a beautiful location, the Sonora Bay Club, right?
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, really where that desert meets the ocean. And I had never seen a place like that before. It was fantastic.
I'd gone there once in 95 on vacation, but if I recall, around March, isn't the water pretty cold?
Yeah. You know what? When we first got there, that village, I think, closed in October, shut down there in the winter. And then we would get there. I think it opened in April. And so I got sent there early to help kind of get things up and running. I mean, of course, my first season, I had no idea what I'm doing. But when we kicked things off and opened up, that water was cold. I mean, not a lot of people came ski. We had wetsuits we would give people. And I was like, I thought I was in Mexico. I didn't know I was back up in Washington State, freezing, trying to ski. So yeah, and then all of a sudden though, middle of summer, we were like one of the hottest places on earth. I mean, we were 120, 125 degrees. The pool was not really a pool. It was more of a hot tub. And even the ocean, I remember that's where I learned how to take a 10-pound weight and tie a ski rope to it and just jump off the side, hold on to it, and just try to get as deep as you can to get in some cold water.
Okay. Do you recall your first week? Do you recall arriving and any like Club Med culture shock or?
So yeah, I mean, I didn't know, I just saw what I saw online. And then when they were telling me like where I was going, and I kind of was doing some research, and I can't remember again who I was talking to. So I was asking like, well, what kind of ski boats, do they have down there? This is before obviously I got down there, and I grew up, skiing behind Mastercrafts and Nautiques and Malibus. And I'll never forget, they said, oh, they have Boston Whalers. I've never heard of a Boston Whaler. I'm like, and I didn't want to sound like I was an idiot. And I was like, oh yeah, Boston Whalers, great boats. Never heard of them. And so I looked them up online. I kid you not. The homepage, like marketing homepage, was a dude driving a Boston Whaler, literally cut in half. And their motto was Boston Whalers, you can't sink them. And I'm like, what boat am I going to be like? What is this? And sure enough, when I got down there, they had 2 Boston Whalers, outboard motors, like a, I don't know, 120, 150 Evinrude, whatever it was. And that early part of the season, it was really, really windy. And I kid you not, you could not sink these things. And trust me, I tried a couple of times. And so that was interesting to get exposure to a different type of ski boat.
Did you get any kind of culture shock arriving? Like, I don't know, were the guests mostly North American or European? Or
it was a good mix. I mean, a lot of Californians, West Coast folks would come down. As far as my first week, I mean, I remember getting off the plane in trying to remember the airport, either Guaymas or San Carlos. I can't remember which location. Getting off the plane, I've got a couple suitcases. They told me what to bring, all the different colors I had to bring with me, and then I had my ski gear with me. And I really didn't know how I was going to get to the resort. I didn't know what I was, literally just not knowing what I was doing. And so I get off the plane and I see a Club Med sign, but it's like written and just like, it's not even branded or anything. It's like handwritten. So I walk up and it was the scuba boat captain. And he's like, hey, are you Boone? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, we're waiting for one other person who was in charge of sailing. His name is Francois. So he shows up, and they knew each other. They'd worked with each other before. So I get in this car with 2 dudes that I have no idea who they are. And they just start talking in French. And so I have no idea what they're saying. And then I started kind of backtracking. I'm like, did I get in the right car? Like, this guy had a handwritten note that just said Club Med. I think he misspelled Club Med, to be honest with you. And I'm like, where am I going? Like, where are these guys taking me? Not understanding the word. They're not really talking to me too much either. So I was like, all right, let's see what happens, and pull into the resort. And, the pictures that you see online, even back then, man, I was like, I didn't think I was in the right place because of just, it was older resort, older club, older village. And I know they had some storms that came through that winter time. So, it looked in rough shape. And when I got there, it was the legendary Chris Hammer Keeley and his wonderful wife, Julie, that greeted me. And yeah, that's really where it started. So as far as shock or anything, it was more of, let's see what this is. And Hammer will always tell the story of how introverted I was and how shy I was. It was more of, at the beginning, just trying to figure out, like, how do I fit in? How do I help out? How do I contribute? And then once I kind of figured out like what my lane was, then that allowed me kind of open up a little bit and kind of show that personality. But this is my first time really being away from home for this period of time, being in really just a completely different environment. So it was just a matter of just kind of figuring out where I fit in and how I could help out.
So since this was an internship, were you only required to stay like 3 months or 4 months?
Well, it was supposed to be 3 months, but the deal was, hey, we need you for at least 6, because of just the way the contracts worked. Right. So, I got there in March. We opened up in April. I think the village closed in October. And so I had to leave early September, because I think I started college like that mid-September timeframe. And, when I went back, and I was supposed to be writing these reports and all this other stuff, sending it back. I mean, that worked all of like for maybe a couple of weeks. And then I was like, forget it. If they want to hear from me, they can call me, because it's, I'm working 7 days a week and just loving life and just figuring out what Club Med is all about. So when I went back home, I had 6 more months of college left. I was graduating in March of 99. So I honestly didn't think, I thought, this was just kind of a one and done. Like, it was a great experience, and it was, met a lot of great people and made a lot of, great friends, and you've got this exposure to different languages, different people, different cultures. And, when you said about the guests, they were from all over the place, mostly North Americans, but we had a lot of, Mexicans come, Europeans, and it was a good blend, even, for folks to get to Sonora Bay. So I didn't think much other than this was great, awesome. And then as I got towards my graduation date, Hammer gets in touch with me, and he's like, hey man, what are you doing after you graduate? And that was a cool thing, was that he actually, remembered. And so I said, oh man, I got a few things lined up. Man, I didn't have anything lined up. I was 22 years old at the time, just trying to figure out what my next steps were. And he's like, you know what, that's awesome, but I'm going to need you to drop whatever it is that you have planned, because you're going to come to Cancun with me. I didn't have anything lined up. No sense of employment after I graduated, 22 years old. And this guy that I absolutely admired is telling me I'm going to go to Cancun with him. I'm like, done, boom, I'm there. And then that, that continued journey within the Club Med world, that was kind of like phase 2, if you will.
So in all, you went from like 98 to 2003. Is that when you stopped, or
2004, I think. So overall, it was like close to 6.5 years. And like every other Club Med XGO, you take those breaks in between, thinking, man, I'm going to go out to the real world. I'm now, I'm a XGO. Everybody knows who I am. And then you go in the real world and you realize nobody knows who you are. Nobody cares who you are. You're not a rock star anymore. And then you're like, God, I really miss Club Med. And then you end up kind of boomeranging right back. Right. So I did that a couple of times for sure. So yeah, really kind of that 98 was my first season, and then kind of wrap things up and really dove into the real world around that 2004 timeframe.
Got any funny stories from your first season?
Oh man, Greg, I don't think you have enough time on this podcast for the
give me the top one from Sonora. Got to be the top story.
What?
It's got to be the top number one.
The
story.
cool thing about that season was, oh man. Well, I'll kind of give the context of just that season overall. The cool thing was, it was Hammer's first season as Chief of Village, right? And he did something strategically that I look back, I'm like, gosh, it was genius. He brought in a lot of first season GOs. Like, there was a lot of folks that, just like me, like, what did I get involved in? Like, what is this place all about? And then he mixed in some really great, veteran GOs that he had worked with. I got a chance to, that's where I first met Big Red. Heidi Jacobson was our costumier. She was like my big sister. A great, GO couple who unfortunately, they aren't around with us anymore. Sneaky and Chantel were there. They were great. I mean, just a great blend of new and top performing GOs that these new GOs could learn from. And really, I got taken under a lot of wings, and it was so cool to just understand the opportunity, right? And some folks got it. Some folks, though, looked at it as, this is work. This is a job. Those of us that made it and ended up like yourself, staying with the club for a while, you realize, my God, this is the best life I could ever ask for. Like, if I'm required to be at a bar at 7 p.m. for bar games, are you kidding me? It's not a job. That's awesome. I'm living life here. This is fantastic. So I think, that was kind of the foundation to really kind of getting out of that comfort zone. And then obviously the shows and just being able to entertain. And that kind of led to the foundation of me eventually, getting into stand-up comedy. So I love doing like the lip sync battles. My ski team, Mark and Mike Lemire were fantastic. And they, I think were trying to test me to see what my comfort level was when they said, hey, we got to do the lip sync battle. We're going to do It's Raining Men, right? The classic. They're like, what do you feel about wearing a dress and high heels? And I was like, done. Let's do it. Tell me what you need me to do. I'll do it. And so that kind of just having that almost open slate or open canvas of just exploring, within a structured format, right? You got structured numbers, but you could kind of play around and improv a little bit. Just being able to do that was so fun. But one thing I'll tell you in regards to just something that was memorable to me was we did or they were going to do this evening event or show at the disco, Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? The classic. Well, I'd never seen Rocky Horror Picture Show. I had no idea what they were talking about. And our chief of sports back then, gosh, it was Eric Turner. He gave me this cassette. Again, that's how old we are, Greg. Gave me a cassette and said, I need you to learn these words where you're going to perform this. You're going to be Frankenfurter for this Rocky Horror Picture Show. I don't know who Frankenfurter is. I have no idea. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. No worries. So late at night, after getting back from the disco, and after a couple of weeks, I started listening to this tape and I learned the words. And they're like, hey, we're going to be doing the show in a couple of days. You got it down? I'm like, yeah, I got the words down. Everything's good. I'm like, but sweet transvestite? What, who is this guy? And that's when they found out. They're like, wait a minute, you've never seen Rocky Horror Picture Show? I'm like, no, I have no idea. And they could not stop laughing at me because I honestly had no idea what it was that they were talking about. And so Heidi, our costumier, she's like, you know what, let me just show you what you have to wear. And this will hopefully give you a little bit more context to who this character is. I mean, the costume it barely hung on the hanger, right? It's thigh highs and some tight, like, I was like, wait a minute, you want me to wear that? So then they got me all dolled up and I ended up doing it. And then first thing I did when I got back from, my first season there, first thing I did, what do you think I did, Greg? I watched that movie and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no,
My mom and dad are going to be so proud of me.
This is eerily similar to my exact same story. I've never seen it either. And I had to do Rocky and they handed me the tiniest thing, like you said. I said, what's this? They said, your uniform. I'm like, oh my God, So no, this is, yeah. And then like you, I went home and watched it like, oh my God, what did we do? And did the people throw like whipping toilet paper rolls at your head while you were trying to do this number? Okay.
The place went crazy because I just based off of the words and the song, like it was the actual song and stuff, the music. I'm like, okay, I figured out how to act as it, but I didn't know the specifics of the character. So yeah, once we put it all together, man, people loved it, man. It was such a great show to do. So fun. Big Red was in there. Obviously Hammer and Julie were in it. So it was a lot of fun to do. And it carried on even, we did it a number of times in Cancun as well.
Now, did you become like comfortable on the mic in Club Med or before that? Like, where did it start? Or did you know you had it? Did you know you had it in you before Club Med?
No, not at all. I mean, I've always been a fan of comedy. I mean, I grew up loving Bugs Bunny. Like,
me too.
Bugs Bunny was made for adults. I mean, but
yeah,
getting that exposure at an early age to just the timing and the humor of that. But I also grew up in a family of just smart Alex, right? I mean, there wasn't a lot of I love yous in my family, but a lot of laughter and just how quick they were in just one-liners and just trying to one up each other. And so there's just a ton of laughter. And as a young kid, I got exposed to that. And the first comedian, I guess, that I ever really saw, I found a again, I'm dating myself here, Greg, VHS tape of Robin Williams, of a show he did. My parents taped it on HBO, and it was a HBO special he did called Robin Williams, a night with Robin Williams in San Francisco. And I watched it and I didn't understand all the jokes. I mean, I was probably maybe 8, 9, maybe 10 years old at the most. I didn't understand all the jokes, but man, I was just in awe of his performance and his energy and just his facial expression. So I had like all these different ingredients and appreciation for comedy, but I never thought of myself being necessarily funny or being a comedian down the road. But then you take that and get exposed to that world of being on stage and being comfortable, you know how it is, just seeing that laughter or that response from an audience or from a crowd, and having that opportunity to do a little bit of improv based off of characters. I mean, not everybody does the same, Frankenfurter. There's different variations. You have this structure to go off of. So being able to do that, I never was on the microphone either in Sonora. And I really didn't have that experience until I kind of got into Cancun. did some numbers away. I did some mic work, and then just watching, the pros, if you will, like Hammer, like, all the great chiefs of villages out there. I had a chance to work with Ryan Leach as well. Just seeing how they worked on the microphone, you just start unknowingly kind of putting these pieces together. But it wasn't until I was working for Hammer in Sandpiper where, we were doing these adult comedy shows, and we actually decided to just rewrite that adult comedy routine. And we just came up with different jokes. And actually we were just Googling jokes and just figuring out, like, how could we act these out? So as we started doing that more and more, I'll never forget, he approached me one night, obviously after a couple cocktails. He's like, man, have you ever thought about doing stand-up? I was like, no, not really. And so he gave me this book that was about writing jokes.
Wait,
and
who's he again, Boone? Who gave you the
Hammer?
book? Hammer. Okay.
Hammer. Yeah. And so he gave me this book about how to write jokes and joke structure. And he's like, just take this book and just think about it. He's like, I think you should give it a shot. And so I went back and I, read it, and it really kind of made sense to me. And I started writing material, and I just started writing. And that's when I really learned, like, it's not about just performing. It's, you got to have the right material and the right flow and the right, setup and punchline. So I started really diving into it, and finally came up with kind of a 5-minute set. And I figured, man, I might as well give it a shot. So I got in touch with the Improv in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I asked them about when their next open mic was, got signed up, and, told Hammer about it. And I was like, I got to get 10 people though to show up, and I was like, I don't know how we're going to do that. Hammer being Hammer. And he's like, don't worry about it. Done. He got a bus and had all of the GOs get on this bus and head down to West Palm Beach, Florida at the Improv just to see me do a 5-minute bit. And so, I was so nervous. I was so like, what am I, again, that whole kind of comfort, out of your comfort zone. What am I doing? Like, how am I going to make this happen? Now I put a lot of work into those 5 minutes, a lot of writing, a lot of practice. And so I'll never forget, like, getting up there on stage. They're like, ladies and gentlemen, it's first time on stage all the way from, Seattle, Washington, give it up for Boone. And of course, I got the Club Med crew there, and they're going wild. So I get into my bit, and I just got locked in. Like, I practiced, and boom, I went right into it. And I knew I was going to get the response from the Club Med crew, right? Because they were awesome. They're going to give me that support. But what I realized is, like, I was getting laughter from people that didn't know who I was. And when you're on stage, you know how it is. You can't see that far out, but you're in tune. You can hear things. You can kind of see that front row and see their response and their facial expressions. So I just felt like it felt good. Like, I could tell I was killing it. And it wasn't just because of my Club Med crew. It was, I was getting a great response from people that, again, that didn't know me. So I did 5 minutes, and it was great. And afterwards, the manager came up to me, and he's like, hey, I haven't seen you perform here before. Where do you perform at? How long you been doing this? And I was like, man, this is my first time. And he's like, oh my gosh, you got to come back. We're doing a competition, an amateur competition. Let me get your name and I'll get you in it. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is my first time. I'm like, I've never done this before. So I don't know if I'm ready yet for that. It's like, no. You won't know unless you try. So just do it. So fast forward a couple of weeks, I come back, and I'm in this, preliminary round, end up doing the same 5 minutes and won the preliminary round. And so then my third time on stage, I come back for the finals, and I end up winning the finals. And so that kind of all of a sudden opened this door to, oh my gosh, there's something here that I can try out. And I got to do, more MC work through the Improv. And so anyways, that led into me doing more and more comedy after Club Med. But I don't know if I ever would have even done it or even thought I could do it if Hammer, hadn't have seen something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that's why I think being an XGO, when you have those relationships with folks, especially great leaders like Hammer, it's those moments in time that really set you up for what your future could potentially be. And that was one of those for me that, I'll never forget, that set me up to do stand-up and has led me to where I am today.
And speaking of today, who makes you laugh today? Like, do you like Will Ferrell or Bill Murray, or Dave Chappelle? Like, where do you get your laughs?
I appreciate, all comedians, and that's, I look at comedy as truly an art form where, you're up on stage and you're trying to paint a picture that audience will appreciate it, that will understand, that will, give you a response on whether or not they like what you're painting, or if they, if they don't like. So there's a ton of them out there. I mean, Bill Murray's fantastic. Yeah. Chappelle. I got to see Robin Williams live when I was living in San Francisco, and Suzie and I were living in San Francisco, and I was doing a lot of stand up there, and seeing him live was just a whole different experience, which was pretty cool. So, and then the classics, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, George Carlin. I mean, there's so many different great ones, and then improv actors like Will Ferrell, Tina Fey. I mean, just her ability, her writing ability is so just admirable. I mean, I love them all. And I think I appreciate what they do even more because I've seen it and experienced it.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, from Cancun, like, why don't you just rattle off the villages where you worked, if possible?
So yeah, first season, Sonora Bay, and then Cancun. So I worked Cancun, it was close to like 3 years, but it was a little over a year and a half straight with Hammer. Went home for a little bit, more so to just detox because that was, it wasn't the family village that is now. That was the, 18 and over.
And get that lime juice out of your eyes.
Yeah. I had to go to the doctor. I had to go to a doctor. I had a problem with snorting salt and squeezing lime in my eye. So, so took a little bit of time off, had a chance to go to Crested Butte for a shorter period of time. Of all things, I went there and they had me bartend. I'm like, I don't know if this is the right decision, but I'll do it for you guys. So Greg Schneider was there, so it was cool to work with him, and some of my water ski crew were working there. Smokey, Matt Simon, I think Heidi was there as well. So really great crew that was there, and I was really kind of going there to recruit back Matt Simon and Chris Lang, his nickname is Smokey, to come back to Cancun one more time for like one last season, like one last hurrah. Ryan Leach was going there as chief of village, or was already there as chief of village. So then we went back to Cancun. So I spent about another 6-7 months there, and then took a little bit of time off. And then Hammer was going to Sandpiper, and he asked me to go there. And I was like, are you serious? Why in God's green earth would I want to go from Cancun to Sandpiper? Like, I'm not doing a family village. Are you crazy? I tell you what, man, once I figured out, and obviously with Hammer kind of guide me along the way, once I figured out Sandpiper, oh my gosh, I had a blast there. I probably partied there almost as much or even more than I did in Cancun, because again, when you have a leader like Hammer, you get some great people, and you make that, regardless of where you are, you make that environment just a fun environment, not only for the GOs, but for the GMs as well. I mean, we had a blast there. And so, yeah, those were kind of the resorts I've been to. Helped out Hammer for a short period of time in Ixtapa as well, but trying to think if that, I think that's all of them.
Okay, so interesting you mentioned Sandpiper, because as you know, I had your wife Suzie on before you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know how you met. So she claims that she saw you on stage, like her first night in the village. And I said, well, wait a minute, you arrived to Sandpiper, have fun, yet you meet your husband the first night you see him. And so do you recall, like, how were you guys friends at first? Was there an instant attraction? Do you recall seeing her for the first time?
Yeah. So she saw, well, her seeing, I guess when I say us, I was doing that number that I think she probably mentioned of great chief of the kids club, Trevor Ray, who up from Toronto. Him and I just had a blast, like just improvising with each other, and Hammer wanted to do, instead of like the variety show, he wanted to do something different. And so we decided, let's do like the Gong Show, back in the day. And so it kind of gave a little bit more guest involvement. And so, guests were the judges, and, we had your classic numbers that you knew weren't going to get gonged, but then Hammer's like, hey, we need to get some more numbers that will get gonged so we can have a good flow. So he came to Trevor and I, and he's like, hey, I need you guys to come up with something. And we're like, yeah, we'll figure something out. Well, where do all great ideas, begin, Greg? The bar. So Trevor and I are at the bar, just kind of talking, like, what are we going to do? And then all of a sudden we went down this path of just talking in German accents. And then all of a sudden it just clicked, like, that's it. Siegfried and Roy. We're going to do Siegfried and Roy. Now, Siegfried and Roy before the accident. So just everybody out there, we're not that cool. We're not going to do it after. It was well before. So we figured out like what we were going to do, but we knew we're just going to improv it. They'll gong us after a minute. And I remember Hammer kept asking us like, what are you guys going to do? And we're like, don't worry about it. It's fine. We'll figure it out. It's that show that night. We're supposed to be up and we're going up next. And Hammer's like, you guys, what are you doing? And it literally just that entire time, we're like, don't worry about it. We're going to get gonged here in a minute. Now, just as a preparation, we took Brian Davidson, who was on my ski team, just as an in case. We found a bear suit backstage and we put him in it. Now, this bear suit was made for somebody between the height of like 5'2" and maybe 5'4". Brian Davidson is 6'3", 6'4", but we crammed his body into this bear suit. And I kid you not, like the legs came up mid calf, the arms were like halfway up his forearms. But the funniest thing was the head part, like the ears, like he couldn't get the thing over his head all the way. So the ears were pointing straight backwards. So we said, listen, we'll call you out if we kind of get caught. Long story short, something that we thought we were going to get gonged in a minute ended up being like a 10-minute bit. And the audience was just dying laughing. And so that kind of became part of the gong show going forward. And yeah, so we got to do it again. And that's where Suzie saw two nitwits on stage just running around. I am Siegfried and I am Roy. And tonight we're going to do magic. And it just built into itself. So yeah, that's when she kind of first saw me. And then, when I first met her, I was like, God, this girl is so much fun. She's so cool. And I was such a nitwit trying to introduce myself and kind of get to know her. First time I really kind of talked to her was backstage. And I'm like, oh, what's your name? She's, oh, my name's Suzie. I'm like, oh, my name's Boone. Where are you from? I'm from Chicago, but I live here in Florida, down in Fort Lauderdale. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm just trying to think of something cool to say. And usually I'm pretty good about, picking up something on the spot as far as something funny. I mean, I was like, I couldn't think of anything. So I just said, oh, well, I got friends in Fort Lauderdale. She's like, oh, great. That's awesome. And then I didn't know like what else to say after that. Like I just completely bombed and I'm like, all right, well, see you later. And that was it. I was like, I just had my chance and I just completely fumbled it. Right. But yeah, we became friends and just really had a blast laughing with each other. And just, one of my objectives was just trying to make her laugh as much as possible. And this kind of, started to grow from there. And, here we are. Gosh, it'll be, I think 15 years this coming June.
And because of Club Med and this union, you have a daughter, correct? So this daughter would not have happened without Club Med, right?
Yeah, she would not be here. There's a lot of things that wouldn't have happened if we didn't have Club Med. I mean, just the friends, the relationships, and then obviously those relationships that lead to marriage and then kids. I know there's a lot of XGOs, good friends of ours that have kids with partners that they've met in Club Med. So yeah, our daughter Samantha, she's 4.5, and man, she is awesome. I'm gonna have my work cut out for me because she doesn't look anything like me. She looks like her mom, which is that's great, but she definitely has the humor and the timing of her old man. So it's a great combination, and she's been to Club Med a couple of times and looking forward to taking her more.
All right. Now, just to get back to Suzie, during our conversation, I think I can pinpoint where the catalyst was for the attraction, because she mentioned that you asked her to do the bruette. Now, I've done the bruette several times in the water ski show. I did it with an amazing girlfriend in Cancun, but I've also done the bruette with someone I didn't know, and it's very awkward. It's kind of like two actors that have a love scene. It's because the female has to straddle you in the water, and if you don't know her, it's like, oh my God, this is awkward. So something's going to happen or something's not going to happen. So that's just my theory about the bruette kind of bringing people together. Is there anything to that, or am I way off base? No,
spot on, Greg.
Okay.
And then, especially if it's somebody that you don't know, you just got to preface, hey, by the way, the water's really cold, so just I'll let you know.
Yeah,
it's the nature of the environment.
Yes, don't get offended if I do, and don't get offended if I don't, type of thing. Yeah, okay, got
it.
Okay.
Exactly. But yeah, so like that was one of the things too, like just in that ski show in Sandpiper, how tight it is in that cove. It's just making sure you find the right person that you can kind of just throw around on your shoulders and upside down and all that stuff. And so, when Suzie, came there, I was like, oh man, she'd be great for the bruette. And I think either consciously or subconsciously, I probably had my own subliminal like intentions maybe. But yeah, she came down and it was a lot of fun. And Yeah, she was great. And we, still ski to this day. She wakeboards quite a bit. So yeah, that was definitely like I said, that kind of maybe conscious or unconscious attempt at trying to progress the relationship, if you will.
Okay. You mentioned Ryan Leach and Hammer. Were there any other chief of villages you clicked with, or any other chief of services that you'd like to mention here?
Yeah, well, Hammer obviously is the one that still mentor to me today, and he was the one I worked with for the most seasons. Ryan, though, was my chief of sports, and then chief of village in Cancun. Love Leachy, man. He was a blast to
too. Yeah.
party with. Yeah, wasn't he great, man? Still great.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Yeah.
just a blast. Worked for Kevin Batt for a little bit, and like I said, for Greg Schneider and in Crested Butte. But that crew was fantastic, and again, really those leaders that just had those contagious leaders, right? That just had great people that wanted to follow them, wherever they went, because of just the fun that they brought, the energy. I never had a chance to work with Hendel, but definitely saw him at a lot of the villages that that he would come visit. So had a chance to hang out with him quite a bit. But yeah, just a great crew. And then brother actually worked for Club Med, and he worked for some great chiefs of villages as well.
And all your time in Club Med, did you ever run into any celebrity encounters?
Oh man, celebrities.
Or
I mean, Greg, we were the celebrities,
athletes?
Greg. We were the celebrities. I mean, we had the badge.
Yes,
we had the badge.
That's right.
Gosh, you know what? I think speaking of comedians, Jim Brewer came to Sandpiper, had a chance to hang with him, and he did a little bit of a set. It was some part of some radio contest up in New York.
He does Tracy Morgan better than Tracy Morgan. Tracy Morgan. Oh my God, it's hysterical. Okay.
Yeah. He's great impressionist. Yeah, he was a cool dude. I'm trying to think. We also had a WNBA player in Cancun. I think it was Cooper. I can't remember. She was a Hall of Famer. She was pretty cool. I think probably one of the funniest though was, I don't know if he was necessarily a star, but people thought he was a star. So we had an impersonator come to Cancun, a Neil Diamond impersonator. Now, when I tell you this cat looked like Neil, I mean, he was a spitting image of Neil Diamond. Like, man, he had the hair and I mean, just mirror image, right? So he came there and he's on vacation. He's one of the, Club Med performers that we used to do back in the day. And, some people were like kind of looking at him and kind of like, God, is that Neil Diamond? But, he didn't have like a big entourage or anything. So we had him do his gig, his show one night, and we had like, fake security. We brought him out in a golf cart and everything. People lost their minds, and he sounded like Neil Diamond, right? He had the whole, USA red, white, and blue sequin shirt. I mean, he was it. Does all these songs. People, I mean, women are losing their mind. Everybody's just like, oh my God, Neil Diamond is here. Well, Hammer then makes the mistake. Hammer makes the mistake at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to introduce our Neil Diamond impersonator, and basically says flat out, like, this isn't actually Neil Diamond. It's so-and-so that's a Neil Diamond. We almost had a riot on our hands. People were so mad that they got duped on a Neil Diamond impersonator. Like, people then also like started to boo. Like, we were trying to hold people back. Like, it's okay. Like, he's still good. Like, people were like, what? That's not Neil. And so like it went from like awesome crescendo to like just complete nosedive in like 2.2 seconds.
Oh man, that's unfortunate. Okay.
Oh, it was great. It was great.
You have any more funny stories like that from any season?
Oh my gosh.
Obviously, I know I'm hamstringing you with my clean and appropriate rule, so my apologies. But yeah,
no, I'll tell you one of the lessons that I learned.
Sure.
When you don't know something.
Okay.
So in Sonora Bay, I'll never the beginning of the season, like I said, it's very, very windy, and we were right next door to not Salem, but the windsurfing. Right, they had the windsurfing team, and so I'd be driving the boat all day, and I'd watch these guys windsurf, and they were awesome. They do beach starts, and I just kind of watching and just visually just learning like how they were doing it. Right. So I'm like, man, I want to do that. It looks so cool. So one day after work, shutting down water ski, they're shutting down. windsurfing. I was like, hey guys, can I take a board and a sail out? You know, I've been watching you guys. I think it's so cool what you guys do. I'd love to try it. Now, this is a pretty windy day, right? And they're like, well, you know, today's probably not the best day. And I'm like, no, just give me a board and a sail and I'll figure it out.
Okay.
So now they're like, who is this guy? Who is this kid? Right. First season, like thinking, and they're like, okay, all right, here you go. They give me a board, they give me a sail, and they were trying to tell me like how to start, you know, pulling it up. I was like, no, I can do a beach start. I was watching you guys. And then, you know, me being just naive at that age, I did figure it out. Like I did a beach start. Right. And so I took off, and in my mind, I'm like, yeah, right. I knew I would show these guys. So I'm hauling and I'm flying down. But then all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, I don't know how to get back. Like, I don't know how to turn the thing around.
Yep.
All of a sudden I start thinking about it. And I said, the wind is howling. I pitched that sail and I went flying over the front end. I could not, for the life of me, could not get the sail back up. I could not get in the right position. And so if you've been to Sonora Bay, there's like another hotel, like way down the beach, like probably a mile and a half. I ended up past that. And I had to do the walk of shame, you know, ankle deep or, you know, calf deep of water, dragging this board with the sail back. I have never been so tired in my life. Nobody came to get me. Nobody checked up on me. Like, they just knew this nitwit's going to go out there. He's going to end up down past this hotel, and he's walking this thing back. Finally get back into the resort, you know, get showered, and I'm racing to make it to, you know, to the bar for bar games. And that whole sailing team, they told my ski team what happened. You know, I'm just exhausted still, and everybody just razzed me for not just that night, like for the rest of the season, man. It was horrible. So yeah, definitely got to have a little bit of humbleness when you don't necessarily know how to do something.
Did you ever get the hang of windsurfing?
I did a little bit. Yeah, I did. And did it in Cancun a little bit more. So yeah, I finally picked it up. My brother got to be a really good windsurfer. So it was kind of cool to see him gain that skill set.
Current question. Do you have a dream where you're still back at Club Med working? Do you dream, and if you do dream, do you get this dream a lot? Because
I daydream about that every single day. It's not like a dream. Like,
okay.
I'm in the corporate, like,
true. Okay.
If the me 20 years ago saw the me now, we probably would be fighting in the parking lot, just having at it, because, you know, back then you're like, man, I'm never, like, that's never going to be me. Corporate ladder, you know, wearing a suit. Forget that. That's where I am today. I love what I do. And where I am today is a big part of the experiences I've had in Club Med. I mean, everything I learned in Club Med, I apply it every single day. But there's times where I'm in my office and I'm just looking out the window. I'm like, God, I would kill to just be back in my boat in Cancun, pulling people, or pulling, you know, people in Sandpiper, and just being at the bar and talking with GMs and GOs. Like, not a day goes by, man, when something in the real world kind of slaps you in the face, and you're like, and that's when you're like almost tempted to just make that phone call. We've all been there, Greg. Gosh, you know what? Beep, boop, 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 boop. Hey, Club Med, heard you need some help out there. What do you need? I got a little bit of time. And yeah, man. So it's not a day that goes by, man. It's like, God, and just the time that, you know, Suzie and I had in Sandpiper, we had a blast there. So thinking about that, but you know, you can reflect back, and that's the great thing about having, you know, these types of things. You know, this podcast is you get to kind of go back down memory lane and, you know, kind of share those stories.
All right, cool. Now, this might be a tough question. I don't know. I'm curious to see that of all the seasons you've done, all the villages, was there a season that was magical in any way? Was it the first one in Sonora Bay because it was your first one, or was it a later one, or that they're all special in their own way?
It's a trick question, Greg, because am I supposed to say the season that I met Suzie? I feel like you're
no, because you know what, you had a life before Suzie, right? So like for me personally, I'll tell you, yeah, mine was my first, because it was my first, and it was a crazy time in Turks and Caicos in '94, and we had this whole Rhinos record celebration there. So yeah. So no, it was it truly was my first, but there were other seasons, yes, that were very special. But I just use the term magical, I guess, because it's kind of a feeling that was never recreated. You know, like there's only in that one resort. So I was just curious if, but you know, you could say you like them all for different reasons, and you know, keep Suzie off our backs. You know, that helps.
Well, there's most memorable, then there's most special, and there's now you know what I mean. Obviously, when Susan and I met in Sandpiper, that was obviously memorable, and that's where we are today. Almost 15 years later after we got married. But I would say that first season, because it really set the foundation to the experiences I had after, right? And I was, I believe in moments in time when you're blessed with interactions or meetings or opportunities to just, meet folks that have an impact on your life. And that season was definitely one of those for me that really made me want to get back to Club Med and just take full advantage, right? And take full advantage of those, other opportunities. But I think it was that first season, especially, like I said, being lucky enough to work for Hammer and, that contagious leadership that he brought. I learned so much from him just in that first season, and then continuing on that relationship and working for him for additional seasons. It all started there. And so I would say that one would probably be the most memorable as far as, again, that foundation to the future seasons I had.
Now, before I let you go, because you've been so generous with your time, is there something I'm forgetting to ask you? Was there something you wanted to say? I don't want to let you go without...
I'll tell you something that kind of from the very beginning, that kind of brings us all full circle.
Sure.
To the impact that Club Med has, on lives and really how small of a world it is, right? I mean, Greg, you and I never had a chance to work together, but I heard of you, you heard of me, and us being able to meet, at that one reunion in 2008 and just being able to share stories. And that's what this whole thing is all about, right? So kind of going back to when I first learned about Club Med and who I first interviewed with, Mr. Steve Miller, back in 98. Well, back in 98, that was the first and last time I had ever spoken to Steve. Like this wasn't, social media wasn't around, back then. So, I've never really thought about him after that. Right. Fast forward though to about 2012, 2013. And my brother and I, we're 8 years apart. So I'm 8 years older than him. So he always had a chance to come visit me in Club Med, but we never had a chance to work together, which quite honestly was probably a good thing for, for Club Med. Because, us two together, when we get together, it's basically, we just look at each other and we're like, all right, let's make some bad decisions. And then we just go and we have fun. But I got him set up with working for Club Med. And then he did his first season in Sandpiper. I gave him all the things he needed to do to just set him up for, hey, if this is the route you want to take, awesome. If not, give it a season, give it your best, and then, move on to something else. Well, of course, he fell in love with it and just did a phenomenal job. And he got to go to Cancun, and he was in charge of windsurf and sailing, down there. So I was getting ready to move companies, transition to the company that I'm with now. And so Suzie and I were like, gosh, you know what, let's go down. And we were living in South Florida at the time. Like, let's go down and visit, Casey for a few days before you start this new gig. So Casey gets us set up, and I'm talking to him on the phone a couple of days before we're supposed to go down. And he's like, oh man, we're gonna have so much fun. It's gonna be so great. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. He's like, yeah, you're gonna looking forward to introducing you to a friend of mine that's on the water ski team. Her name's Carly Ann, and she's from Seattle. She's a big Seahawks fan. She went to University of Washington. She's a great water skier. She used to compete downhill snow skiing. He's talking to her. I'm like, my brother's never talked about anybody, let alone a female, in that regard with that much like enthusiasm. I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this person? So I'm like, all right, yeah, we'll definitely meet her. And then he follows up with, yeah, and her last name is Miller. Now, again, I hadn't thought about Steve Miller for, decades almost. And so it doesn't click. And I'm like, all right, well, our last name is Dell. So I don't know what the big deal is. Her last name Miller, our last, like, what does that mean? And then he finally goes, her dad is Steve Miller. And I was like, oh my gosh, it finally clicked. And I was like, I thought two things. Like, one, again, what a small world. And two, oh my, I am so old. Like, how is somebody that I interviewed with now, a kid, is in Club Med? So we go down, we visit, and she's great. And her and my brother were just friends at the time. But I saw something there. I was like, oh man, this is gonna lead into something. So they end up working, they go to Turks, they work together, and they end up, dating. So they worked at Turks for, gosh, almost as long as I did in Cancun. So probably almost 3 years. They ended up going to Japan for a season there. So fast forward even a little bit farther, They ended up getting married a couple years ago in Turks and over at Johnny Mac's place. And then they now have a 1-year-old, Caden, who is now part of that Club Med family. So it's funny, right? It just all kind of circles back. And, when we were at their wedding and I was talking, I was like, on behalf of Steve Miller and I, to you, Casey and Carly Ann, you're welcome. Because if we had not met in 1998, this would not be happening, right? So yeah, and just having that Club Med just history of when they went through it, when we went through it, when my brother and Carly Ann went through it. So, maybe down the road, my daughter and nephew will be the future GOs of the future.
One quick question. Did your brother and this lady perform the Bruette in the water ski show? Just curious.
Somehow he figured out how to do a Bruette on a windsurfboard. I don't know how that worked.
Hey, when there's a will, there's a way. Okay.
Yeah, apparently it did. Apparently it worked. So yeah, it's
well, that is definitely a very small world. I didn't think the story was going to land there, but I was like, oh, wait a minute. While you were saying it, I go, don't tell me Miller had a daughter. Oh, wow. That's pretty cool, man. Holy jeez.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Whew. Man, am I forgetting to ask you anything else? Because man, you're spinning gold here, so I hate to let you go.
No, man. Hey, listen, this has been awesome, and like I said, man, I don't know too many companies out there that would have ex-employees doing podcasts with other like I don't see IBM or Microsoft doing podcasts with former programmers, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I don't know how many listeners they get, but yeah.
Like, hey, Larry, tell me about the time that you were stuck in a 4x4 cube for 16 hours a day. Wow, it was great. It was fantastic.
And you ran out of staples for your red line stapler.
Yeah, exactly.
Your swing line stapler. Okay.
Yeah, remember, Larry, when you absolutely lost your minds? And oh yeah, I remember that.
You're kind of describing my job now. Stop it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so where are you at now? Where did you end up? What are you doing?
I'm at Concordia University.
Okay.
I work in aerospace engineering, just basically a program assistant for undergraduate students, helping them, giving them advice. Oh boy, I don't know if you want to take advice from me, but I love giving advice for students that want to quit, because that's when I really turn it on. Because I wish someone would have said that to me, because right now, fast forward, I'm trying to finish the degree I started, before I left for Club Med, wishing I had just finished it way back when. So now when they tell me they want to quit, I really lay it on thick.
Yeah, that's awesome. So like, how did you started in 94 in Turks?
Yeah, that was my first season. Ryan Leach was actually my first chief of sport, and probably to this day, like the best chief of sport I've ever had. Like I love Ryan Leach. Like
now, how robust was the mustache back then?
Yeah. It was full Magnum PI, baby. Oh yeah. In fact, he got injured, I think, playing volleyball. He left for a couple of weeks, and when he came back, everyone in the village wore a fake mustache, like to greet him. Like that's how much he was loved. Even the women were wearing fake mustaches.
So Ryan actually. You just made me think of probably another, well, not say probably, I guess I don't want to say emotional, but something that really touched my heart, something that he did when I left my season when he was chief of village in Cancun. So like our ski team, I mean, sports team in general, usually you got that team full of nitwits. And that was, our ski team. Like all of us dyed our hair different colors. We were such a tight knit group. Like even we were thinking, all right, do we all get a tattoo? And some of us were like, I don't know. I mean, I love you guys, but I don't love you that much. So we made the decision. All of us went downtown Cancun one night, that Thursday Daddy Rock Daddy O's.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Instead of a tattoo, you know what? We're getting nipple rings. Sure enough, all 5 of us got nipple rings.
Oh, God.
So anyways, I would always I just dressed different. Like that was a cool thing about Club Med. You could just, hey, here's the dress code or the colors. You do with it what you want. So during the day, I'd wear my visor upside down just because I didn't like it covering my eyes. And then, at night, for some reason, I just rolled up my pants. I don't know why to this day I would do that. So I just had a certain kind of look, if you will. My last night, because I had to leave a little bit earlier than the rest of the crew, I had to get back home. And my last night, though, was so cool. The dress code was dressed like Boone night. And so everybody in the village had visors on upside down or hat on backwards. pants rolled up, or like always wore overalls on like jeans night or something. And that to me was like, that was so cool for, him to do. And, that's the cool thing about the people you get to meet. They make those attempts at, making that moment in time special. And that was definitely one of them.
Wait, I really have to ask. Okay, does it hurt when you get your nipple pierced? And did you watch it as they were doing it?
I'll be honest. I don't know who was more drunk, us, the ski team, or the guy doing the piercing. Like I had to guide him to where
God.
he was about to pierce like my upper chest. And I was like, "What do you? No, lower, abajo." And yeah, it wasn't that bad, but you had to really maintain it, right? Because we were in that lagoon, that salt water. It didn't do justice, man. I mean, you had to maintain. And then I remember doing a couple numbers like the Blues Brothers, I think, where I would slide on my chest. And God. I forgot, and I rolled, like I slid on the wrong side, and that was it's again, what, like I was fine with that. Like I was one of the ones that's like, man, I'm not getting a tattoo. I love you guys, but this, that's too permanent.
Yeah, let's just pierce our nipples. Like,
yeah, let's just do something less extreme and
permanent.
shove a steel rod in a body part. I think I'm more comfortable with that.
Oh man, no, I definitely would have went for the tattoo. I'm not squeamish, but just you describing the story is making my stomach turn. Like, like what if you snagged it on something? Right? If you snagged it on something and forgot, like, oh God.
Hindsight. So 94, you're in Turks. Leach was there as who is the chief of village?
It was Jean-Pierre Grand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Also,
so did you cross paths with Scott Duncan?
Name does sound familiar. I'd have to see a photo, but the name is ringing a bell. I don't know if he was on the team then. We did have a lot of people visiting.
Because I think he did his first season in 95 there.
Was he water ski?
I think he came in as just land sports, maybe. I don't
the name sounds familiar, but I don't think we ever did a season together though.
Yeah.
Then like you, I stopped, and then I went back in 96, like, I'm gonna get a real job, but yeah. And then I went back from 96 straight to 2005.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. Oh, wow. So what were all the villages you were at?
Woo, geez. I did Columbus Isle 3 times, so 2.5 years in Columbus. No, I didn't do anything wrong. They didn't. Was
that because you were on the blacklist from going to the casino?
No. I only got on the blacklist once, and that's because I did a season au pair in Italy. And then when I got back, I was thinking I was a hero for helping out the company. And they're like, no. When you go au pair, you're like saying you don't need us. I'm like, what? So they sent me to Columbus Isle a second time for a year.
Yeah, we're going to work off the debt that you racked up. You owe us $2,500.
Remember, I love the blacklist. I forgot about that. When I started doing this podcast, people reminded me of it. Like, yeah, they had a list of GOs. You go in the boutique because you wanted cigarettes or gum. They're like, oh, no, you owe us. Or those GOs that would do a whole season. And then they go see the gestionnaire and they'd be like, great season. Thank you. You owe us $600.
Yeah.
Like they spent all their money and then owed money.
or how you got paid out. Like I remember in Mexico,
oh, God.
It's like you go to, cash out, if you will, like, and they give you like a bag full of pesos. And now you got to go to, middle of Cancun with like $1,500 worth of pesos that you got to exchange. Hope to God you don't get, mugged.
Yeah. You feel rich. You feel rich, right? Because of the,
you walk around.
The notes denomination. Oh my God. I got 1,500.
Oh, I know. That'll last me all 2 weeks of my vacation.
Yeah. What? Wait a minute. I just handed them 1,500. They gave me back 200 US. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Big fees down there.
Yeah. I did Playa Blanca in 97. So I also did.
Oh, that was one I wish I could have done. They had, I think Sonora. So yeah. Because when did that one close down?
Well, these you closed. Let's see. They closed for the summer actually. So that was their rainy season, I believe.
Okay.
A long rainy season, and then they open up around I think October, November.
Yeah.
Well, no water ski there, so you probably would have had to done sailing or bar or something,
Yeah. Well, actually, my first season in Cancun, because the ski team was full, I did land sports. That first season, and then I went back to the ski team. I think the winter. So like Red and I did did land sports together. And I think you had Victoria. What's Nick's last name? Nick and Victoria. Was it Nick and Victoria?
They do sailing?
No. Nick, we worked together my first season in Sonora. Nick how do you say his last name? He's a pilot now.
Yeah. I just interviewed him. Yeah, Nick Margellos and Veronica. Yeah,
Veronica.
I've had them both on.
Nick and Biro.
Yeah, well, Nick came on twice. Once for Next Geo, once for a commercial pilot, because I wanted to know everything about how you become a commercial pilot.
Yeah, so. Nick was a good guy. So we were roommates in for a period of time in Sonora. And then he's the one that taught me how to. So that's the other great thing about Club Med is like, if you're willing to do whatever, like, then they're going to put you in a situation where you just need to do it. So my first time scuba diving.
Wait, Boone, before you go on, like, do you think that the listeners, this is just an honest question, what should I stop the recording and we talk, or do you want to we'll just both keep talking and they can listen if they want, or they can shut it off? What do you want to do?
Oh, up to you, man.
You tell me, man. I like talking to you, but I'm it's still recording, so I don't know if the listeners have tuned out already.
I don't even know how long we've gone.
Oh, we've gone over an hour and 15.
Oh my God.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. You get two guys, who spent a lot of years in Club Med. So we could sign off and keep as you wish, man. It's your show. I don't care, man. I mean, like, I don't know if they'll keep listening past an hour, but I'm willing to go if you are.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can spice it, right?
Yeah. Well, no. I'm gonna run the whole thing, man. I'm just gonna take out any tisks or ums we make, or ahs. No, I'm gonna let the whole thing run, or we could sign you off now and keep talking.
I'll just tell you his last story about
yeah. Okay.
So my first time scuba diving was beginning of that season in March, when a lot of us got there before the village opened. We had to find the anchors for the floating ski dock. And so they're like, yeah, they're four of them. They're out there, however many yards it was. I'm just following these guys. Like, I don't know, like, it's Mark, my chief of ski. I don't know if Mike had gotten there yet, but then a couple of the windsurfing guys and the scuba team. So they all go walking up to the scuba shack, and they're getting gear on and tanks. And all of a sudden, somebody just hands me a tank, gives me a mask and fins. I'm like, what are you doing? They said, you got to come help us. We got to do a grid and whatever. And I was like, dude, I've never scuba dived before. And he goes, well, are you comfortable underwater? I was like, yeah. He's like, then you'll be fine. Just breathe through your mouth.
Oh my God.
That was my lesson. Breathe through your mouth. All right. So I throw on the tank and walk out backwards, with fins. And so once we start rubbing, we weren't that deep, but you're just rubbing your hands back and forth, trying to find these anchors. So we're supposed to follow this grid. Well, once everybody starts moving their hands, sand is all over the place. I end up probably 50 yards away from where we're supposed to be. I finally, I hear something banging underwater. So I'm thinking, well, maybe that means I need to go up. I don't know. So I finally pop my head up. I look over. I'm not even close to everybody else. And
sounds like a windsurfing story, Boone.
Exactly. Right. I mean, I was like, oh, I tried, man. I told you I'd never done this before. So my second time scuba diving was with Nick. And one day after work, really calm day. And he's like, oh man, let's go out and I'll show you a couple things. So we go out and he hands me a Corona. Like, we're all geared up, ready to go, jump off the side of the boat. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm gonna teach you how to drink a beer underwater. Like, what? Like, no, just hold on to it and I'll show you. All right, I'll do it. So we flip over off the side of the boat and we go down, I don't know how many feet it was. And, he just looks at and points his eyes at mine and then at his. He's like, just watch me. And he pops that top, throws his thumb in there, takes his regulator out, boom, and just chugs it. And I was like, oh my God, I thought he was joking. Like, he can act, oh God, I know I got to do it. So I did that. And man, I've never drank a beer that fast in my life. Like, I don't even know if I tasted it. That's how fast with that pressure shot that thing down. But yeah, Nick was definitely a professional at it for sure.
Yeah,
exactly. Now he flies planes, right? Like, if passengers knew what this guy did in the past, I'd be like, I'll walk.
Yeah, let me fly. Okay.
Yeah, let me Uber. I'll Uber. What did you do? You drank beer underwater? No, I'm good.
Oh, bad. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, that was the one, the only Boone. Okay. Wow. I want to thank you again, Boone, for sharing your story. It's been really kind of you, man. I had a great time.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for doing this. And to all the XGOs out there, man, hope you're all doing well and looking forward to seeing you all in person in the near future.
There you have it from the man himself, Boone, and we'll see you all next week. Bye. Say bye, Boone.
Bye, everybody.